Now, I became I always say to people, an accidental expert on imposter syndrome. So I want to tell you a bit about my stories. So when I wrote my second book a couple of years ago, I mentioned imposter syndrome. It talks a lot about self-doubt, self-efficacy, overcoming fear of failure and perfectionism. And so imposter syndrome features, and it was the one thing after that book was released that everybody wanted to talk about, which clearly to me showed that it was trending. It's something that's much more talked about these days. It's trending with people, it resonates, and that's why I ended up being this accidental expert on imposter syndrome. It was the one thing from the book that the TV, radio, magazines, anybody that rang me up, that's what they wanted me to talk about. So I want to share my experiences because I've had a career in human resources for a couple of decades before I ran my own business. And so I did a lot of work with people. And there were some recurring themes that I'd noticed in myself growing up and progressing through my career. But it was only when I started working closely with other people, and often really successful people that were at the top of their game in their career, that I started to notice, oh wow, it's not just me. And whenever I talk about imposter syndrome, there is always someone in the room that's hearing it for the first time, and they get that kind of look that flashes across their eyes of, wow, this is a thing, it has a name, and it's not just me. And for me, I spent many years suffering from my own imposter syndrome, and it's not something we talk about, which is why we tend to think it's only us and therefore it must be a weakness of ours. And I left school relatively early. I didn't want to continue with my education. I wanted to get straight into work. I wanted to earn money, be independent. But this not having a degree and not being at university plagued me throughout my corporate career, particularly when I got through the ranks where I was in positions where a degree was a must-have and all I could offer was the equivalent experience. And of course for me that was a breeding ground for my imposter syndrome. It turned the volume right up. You don't have a degree. Who are you to have this job? You're leading teams of people that do have degrees, and that really played on my insecurities. But even after that, even after I left the corporate world, I wrote my books. I remember when I was asked to go and do an imposter syndrome workshop for the Office of the Prime Minister in New Zealand. Massive imposter syndrome, because I sat there in the reception of Parliament House feeling like an imposter, thinking, who are you to be here talking to these people about this? Who are you to be an expert in imposter syndrome? And of course the irony is that I was about to go and give that talk and be that person to the Office of the Prime Minister. And I did, and it went well and it felt great. But I noticed when I was sat in reception that the volume on my imposter syndrome had started to turn up. And that's what we're going to look at a bit more in this course, because it never goes away. It's always there if you suffer from imposter syndrome. There will just be certain times in your life where it increases its volume. Sometimes it's when we've had time off with children and we're returning to the workplace, or it's when we've got a promotion, or there might be certain areas of your life that imposter syndrome features. So it might not be career related. It might be more about how we look or our relationships. But the thing is with imposter syndrome, we don't overcome it completely. We turn the volume down and it rears its head at certain parts in our life, and that's why it's important we learn how to navigate it, and we'll learn some practical tips in this course that will help you with that.